Welcome back, guys. People have been asking how to repack a stern gland. I figured I've got the opportunity to show you some equipment that's not in a boat. Access is easy, so I'll show you the basics, run you through it quickly, which we've discussed many times before. Shaft would be on the outside of the boat, propeller would be attached here. This is your steel work for the hull. There's your boss welded in the steel work here. Shaft bearing, then your gland, and then the flange that packs that compresses the packing, and then there's your locking nuts that keep this in place, and obviously your shaft coming in. So when do you repack a stern gland? Well, there's a lot of different perspectives on that. Generally when this part is as close to the main body as possible, but it can vary a lot. So if you're using lots and lots of grease and you're tightening this up and it literally doesn't go any further, the shaft spins freely, most important, then you probably want to consider repacking it. It could be that the shaft is worn out, so there's not really a single video that will cover every possible system that we get here. Some people have packing glands with a nut on the end, which you just do the nut up and it compresses, and a locking nut to keep that in place. So it can vary. But the basic premise of the video is to give you a rough guide and try and help you with the process. Yes, you can repack a gland in the water. If your equipment is really poorly and in a bad way, you know, debatable how far you want to go with it. Provided you've got a decent working bilge pump down below, you've got patience, confidence, hopefully from this video, you've got the correct tools, pair of gloves, great idea, plenty of blue roll because you're going to get loads of grease and it's going to be a mess down there. Generally when you need to repack it, there's grease has been splatting out all over the place. A spanner can vary depending on what size nut system you've got. This is an imperial system, so imperial nuts, spanners will be ideal. A family blade or an X-Acto knife, whatever you kids call it these days, a withdrawing tool for pulling out the packing. Now there's lots of ways of doing that. A screwdriver does work flat-headed, but this makes life a lot easier. It's basically a corkscrew effectively. I'll put a link where to get this from, they're not expensive, and the correct size packing. Every shaft has different sizes for the packing you'll need. I've tried to find a chart to guide you, but you can have a different system, so I don't want to give you one rule for everything because it doesn't work. But basically, when do you tighten a gland? Before we discuss that, the way I tend to explain to people is if you're pumping your greaser, which is up on the deck somewhere, which will pump grease into this point here, grease is coming out on the inside, the packing needs tightening because the grease is coming inside and not going down the tube and helping create the seal. So that'll be a point when you want to tighten it. So what you do then is simply undo your locking nuts. These are just standard nuts, they're not nylocks, anything like that. Loosen them up, and then you tighten this up each side, equal amount of turn on both sides until the packing is, you know, tight enough. The key thing here is to compress the packing enough you can still turn the shaft easily without any major force. Yeah, it has to be comfortable, and the grease, as you grease it, goes in and no grease comes outside. All you're doing is creating a seal. Don't become a griller and overdo these. You can damage the shaft, you can compress the packing too much and potentially create heat. You do not want to allow heat to generate in this unnecessarily. That is never acceptable. So the premise of this is stop water coming in, the shaft can turn and still no water will come in. If your equipment is really worn out and this shaft was bad, potentially there'll be like a groove, as the previous videos how bad is my stern gear. You can then have a problem where the gland will compress the packing, but it won't actually create a seal. So you have to kind of diagnose what you've got, how to resolve the problem you have, and then what's the correct procedure. But this hopefully will give you a rough guide. So let's assume now that this flange has travelled down as far in the main body as possible. This one will actually go flush, so this face here will come up to this face, but we've got packing in there still, so it can vary. So undo your locking nuts, withdraw them, take them all the way. This can actually get quite tight at the end because the threads are a bit worn out. Yes, you can get ratchet spanners or old-fashioned imperial nut spanners, whatever you want to get. You may have to get 2 spanners because the nuts need to be locked against each other. But you have to make do with what you've got, I suppose. But, you know, preparation and everything. So in the background they're lifting a boat. So I'm up at P&S Marine again. I'll put a link description to the yard. They can lift almost any size boat on the cut as far as I'm aware. So I believe their crane is rated at 70 tonne, I keep saying it. Right, that's one side. So sometimes these are just jammed and you have to just pay patient, work it with a spanner, and it will come off eventually. Right, now to take this back, just gently work it from both sides to try and extract it. Spanners can help sometimes. It comes out easy enough. There we go. So put it all the way along the shaft. At this point you may get water coming in because you've upset the seal. It's not tight anymore. Don't worry. Yeah, a sort of steady kind of light stream would be acceptable. Put your tool in the hole and wind it in. Again, you can use a number of tools to try and extract this. You've got to be careful not damaging your shaft. That is the most critical part here. Once that's all in and it's got a grip, it will pull out, you see, like that. So that's one piece of damaged old packing. So there's one piece in comparison to the new piece, which is nice and square still. You may come in here and find no packing because it's worn out and it's been absorbed down the shaft. If your shaft is really worn out and the bearing's failing, then there's big enough gap for it to disappear out the back of the boat. So there's your more of your packing. And just have a quick eye in there, and that's it. We've now bottomed out. So I'll show you something quickly. So if you put this back on and wiggle it in, so when this goes in, it can travel all the way down. So if it does do this, you definitely need to have more packing. No matter how much you tighten it, you're just tightening metal against metal. It won't do anything for you. And if you can't turn the shaft, then you've got a big problem there. So you probably can't see, but there is a little bit, tiny bit of wear on this shaft. But at this point here, it's not too bad. We know the bearing on this was really bad, and the shaft was worn further down. So anyway, withdraw your flange part all the way out. You may have to deal with the coupling in the way, and you may only get much room, but if you've, like me, patience is the virtue here. Once that's back and you've got clear, yes, you will be getting water coming in at this point, and yes, there'll be a lot of grease. That's where your blue roll comes in. Wipe it up, put it in a little pile, put it to the side because that will go in the bin later. Take your new packing, and the trick I use is simply to create a coil, try and get the flat part of the packing. So this is a square, yeah? Make sure it stays flat against the shaft. Don't let it twist on itself. Just work in a coil. So generally, as a rule of thumb, 3, potentially 4 rings will go into the packing seal bed. I tend to find 3 is a very common size. Sometimes it's not enough room, but again, it can vary a lot. So once this is tight, you've created now a point. Bring that over that way a little bit. Where you take your Stanley knife or X-Acto knife, whatever it is you've got. Do not cut this on the shaft. If you slip and score the shaft, you put a hole in it, and it's going to potentially damage things. Just simply score, but make sure the mark on this is big enough, clear enough. So when you do this next stage, just pull this off. You then see your lines. There's one line that creates the correct amount of length to make 1 ring. You come down here, there's a second ring. Okay, so you've now got 2 rings. You could go further and make 3, depending on what you need to do. So once you've got rings, you then take your knife and put this on a surface you don't mind cutting into if you did slip. So I'll do it here. I'm going to do 1 ring because I don't want to waste my packing here unless I'm going to fix another shaft. So there's a ring. So what you do now is you wrap it round so it touches like so, and then you put it in the hole. If your alignment is poor on your engine system, the shaft could be leaning over if it's worn out, and putting it in one end will be easier than the other side. You have to you have to work with what you've got and deal with the problem at hand. So you just put it in, you pack it down all the way, working round. And what I like to do is use this part of the system here to help it bed in flat and square all the way around. It's a bit fiddly. Just push it in, and that will put it in nice and square. So then you're ready for your next ring, and so forth. When you put the cut part of the ring, try to offset them, so don't have them all lined up together, because that can create a channel for water to come in and help alleviate. It can actually cause more of a problem rather than alleviating the problem. So you keep going until you've got 3, bring it in. Now I like to make sure that the bottom part of this flange, or this diameter, actually sits inside the gland here, because if it's sitting on top, it could actually prevent it from compressing the packing properly. So that would be about there. Put your first set of nuts on. Finger tight is generally a wise idea. What you're looking for is the packing to be tight enough that when you use the greaser, water and grease isn't coming inside. and the shaft can turn freely without any stress. If you're stressing out the shaft and it's hard to turn, you're binding up your too tight. Make sure you do both sides up equally. If you offset it by over tightening, you'll pull it over and you actually cause it to bind on the shaft, again creating more premature wear. Once you're happy, you put your second set of nuts on the back and then you lock it off. So hold that, lock it. Tiny little nip, that's all it takes, stop them from dropping off. You may have to readjust again, but it's a little bit of a game. Once they settle in, they tend to be reliable for a long period of time. The minute you get grease coming in, you need to re-tighten it again, okay? And then if it's going all the way down, you're about that far. I have come across some of these systems where that will bottom out of that height. That's as far in as it will go. So again, there's so many different variants of this equipment out there. Your system can vary. If you want better description of a particular system, let me know what you're after and I'll endeavour to make that video for you. I hope that helps. Thank you.